delivering on the promise of whole community. I hope you and your families are all doing well. My name is Grace Araya, and I'm the Director of Community Systems Statewide Supports at Illinois Action for Children. Just a little background about me. I started off in this field as a teacher assistant in a pre-K classroom. Later on, became a teacher and then a director at that same program in Chicago. It's a community-based organization, and we had Preschool for All, Prevention Initiative, Early Head Start, and Head Start. And now I've been with Illinois Action for Children for almost 2 years now with this project, which I'll say a little bit about, but I'll let Ruby introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Ruby Flores. I am lead coach and trainer with the Community Systems Statewide Support Team. And I have been with Illinois Action for Children for almost 10 years in various capacities. But my experience with families and young children started back in 1998. So it's been over 20 years of working with families and children. And I'm very happy to be here with Grace.
Great. All right, so I'm following the chat, so please do continue to engage with us through the chat box. And I see that you all said the mic volume was a little lower, so I turned it up. So hopefully that's better. If it's not, please let me know, and I'll be happy to turn it up some more. I think I have it at the highest, but I'll see what I'm able to do. Okay, and so I just want to give you all some background in terms of the perspective that we're bringing to this webinar. So Ruby and I are both part of the Community Systems Statewide Supports Team, which we refer to as CS3 at Illinois Action for Children. And really what our role is to develop a statewide training and technical assistance system that builds the capacity of community collaborations to improve early childhood education systems. So we are really focused on supporting early childhood collaboration. So this is in a community where a group of people have come together and said that, you know what, we want to improve outcomes for children and families in our community, and we want to work together around that goal. And so we support them through coaching and technical assistance. And then later on in this webinar, you'll be able to hear a little bit more about the supports that we do provide. So what I'd like to do now is to find out who is in the virtual room with us today. So a poll will be launched. And if you could just respond, how would you describe your role? We have early childhood teacher or paraprofessional, elementary school teacher, parent educator or home visitor, school district administrator, child care provider, or TA provider. So I'll give you all a second to complete that. And let me try adjusting my sound a bit.
seem to have temporarily lost Grace's sound, so if you can bear with us for just a moment.
Okay, we can move on for a little bit while Grace comes back on.
Hello?
Can you put up the poll again, the results?
Okay,
Oh, there
so
she is. Welcome
I'm
back.
not using my headset anymore. So I was using my headset and it seemed like it was a bit fuzzy. I'm not sure why. So if you all can hear me okay, sorry about that. So our poll results show that the majority of folks on the webinar are early childhood teachers. And then we do have a few parent educators, home visitors, as well as providers. It looks like we have consultants, as well as a collaboration member and a representative from elementary school. So great. All right. So what we're hoping from this webinar is for you all to be able to understand what we mean when we say community systems development approach. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But also to know what are the key elements of an early childhood collaboration? What makes up a collaboration? And then hopefully that you all will be inspired to collaborate in your respective circumstances. So a lot of you are teachers, and so it may look like you, as a result of understanding the value of collaboration, you collaborate with maybe with other teachers, maybe with family support specialists, or you're working with other stakeholders in the community. And so what we'll do now is we'll show a video. This video is produced by Build Initiative. They provide TA to states around early childhood systems building. So this will help to ground us in the idea of systems work or systems building and what that looks like. And so we'll do a brief discussion around it right after the video.
What if you could get every person who supports children from birth to age 8 in one room? Every parent, educator, doctor, social worker, park district coordinator, business leader, policymaker, everyone. They'd agree every child deserves a caring and supportive community rich with opportunities for children to play, grow, and learn. And to make that happen, what if all the programs, agencies, and services for children were working together, making it so there is no wrong door for families to walk through when seeking support for their children? You'd call that wishful thinking. We call it systems building. Now, what do we mean by that? At the state and local level, a systems building approach helps partners connect and communicate in order to get the best outcomes for all children. Systems building builds on existing effective practices, from improving quality to engaging families, ensuring accountability, and promoting racial equity. And states working together so that each state doesn't have to reinvent the wheel, making it so all children can benefit from the whole system's vision. A vision where families can easily access high-quality programs and services regardless of their neighborhood. Where agencies working with children and families will have the resources to meet their needs and are staffed with people who are diverse and culturally competent. The long-term result of systems building? Everyone becomes a critical part of a system that reaches each and every child. It is possible. Equitable outcomes for our youngest children need not be wishful thinking in any state or community. Together, we can get it right from the start. Let's make it happen.
Okay, so if you could use the chat box now and to just think about what word or image stood out for you as you're watching the video. What words or images? So I hear, so we have quality stood out, collaboration, together, making a difference, right? Michelle said the dots that were connecting all the people involved, social equity or equitable, everyone working together. Okay, thank you for your response. And let's not reinvent the wheel, right? And all the possibilities of working together. How did the video make you feel? Jerry said happy, hopeful, right? So yes, there's certainly the things you think about. How are we actually going to be able to do this, right? You think about money and everything it takes, but a feeling of hopefulness, optimism, right? Someone said it made me feel bad, right? Sometimes that could be as a result of knowing how far away we are from that, right? Was there anything new for you in this video? Is there anything that you learned or something that was new for you? So the term systems approach was new, right? You're going to be hearing that throughout the presentation. So this video was really to give you a sense of what is it that we mean when we say systems building, or this idea of community collaboration, right? And so like what some of you said in terms of connecting the dots, it's realizing that we all have a stake in making sure in our communities that children and families that we see really great outcomes for them, right? And so we're connected. And so how do we then not reinvent the wheel, but make sure we're working together and not against each other? Margaret said, I didn't know Illinois was working on partnerships. Yeah, so you're going to see in some slides that are coming up that there are early childhood collaboratives across our state. There's a little over 40 collaborations. And so you'll hear a little bit about what are the things that they're working on? How do they form? How do they get started? And like I said earlier, our role is really to support early childhood collaborations, whether they're just getting started or they've been around for a very long time. Okay, so continuing on this idea, right? Thinking of reimagining. What if? So what if all the programs, agencies, and services for young children worked together? I just want you to imagine with me. What if that happened? What would change for children? So Tom said no more overlapping, right? You wouldn't have a duplication of services. There would be equality. There'd be more success for children and the staff, right? So think of children outcomes. Think about health. Think about well-being. What would change for children? Right? So more children would benefit. We would be working smarter, not harder. There'd be less confusion. And one thing, there'd be consistency in practice, right? So you'll see that. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. There'd be more continuum of services and progress. So some things that could change for children, and again, remember, we're thinking about the whole trajectory of children. So more pregnant or new mothers and babies, they would receive the support before and after the baby's birth, right? If we're thinking about having better outcomes for children, it really does start before birth. Right? So we would see a lot more support around that as all the different sectors are working together. More children would be screened and receive services. So one of the strategies that communities use, again, we'll talk about a little bit later, is they use a collaborative developmental screening strategy, meaning that wherever children are at, whether it's the pediatrician, whether it's through a home visiting program, or it's the early learning program, those children are screened, and we're able to track on a community level how many of our children are screened and receiving services. There would be better alignment, right? Someone else brought this up in terms of consistency in practice, alignment. It wouldn't look very different for children going from pre-K to K, right? We know that's one of the major transition points. There would be continuity, right? Because we would have this pre-K teachers and kindergarten teachers, and then other folks that are involved, and parents as well, thinking about what that transition is like, what's the supports that are needed. And someone said less confusion, for sure. So we know that one of the things we see across our state is, pre-K programs generally are play-based, right? And sometimes it could be a stark change when children go to kindergarten and if play-based curriculum is not being implemented. Okay, so going on that same thinking of reimagining, so what if all programs, agencies, and services for young children worked together? What would change for families? So let's look at it from the perspective of a family that's typically on the receiving end of these services. What would change for them? They'd be less stressed, right? Because they wouldn't have to be trying to navigate all these different systems. The folks in those different sectors and systems would be talking to each other and hopefully have gotten families' input, right? They would be more involved, that's right. They would experience more of a seamless transition as they're moving throughout the early childhood system. Someone else said families would have access to a range of connected resources, right? And they wouldn't spend time trying to discover where to go for help. That is absolutely right. They would have more trust, for sure. You all have a lot of really great ideas that are coming in terms of what would change for families. So some of you have already said some of this, but they would be better able to secure what they need for their children, right? So often parents may go to the particular system that they trust. Maybe it's their home visitor, maybe it's their doctor, but wherever they go in the community, they'd be able to secure what they need for their children because they are all connected to each other as those service providers. Someone said they'd be more involved. So that's right. They would participate in decision making, right? Oftentimes, we don't always include families from being a part of the decisions that affect them and their families. But adopting a systems approach, one of the things is that you realize you have to have a diverse set of stakeholders, and families are the ones that are directly experiencing a lot of the issues that we're trying to address. And this idea of the no wrong door, they can go anywhere to get access to the services that they need, right? Yep, and someone else said they'd be better informed. Yep, that would be another aspect to this. So lastly, let's think about, we thought about the children, we thought about the families. Again, if all the programs, agencies, and services for young children work together, what would change for programs and schools? They said one-stop shop, right? That was the idea of the no wrong door. They would be better informed, right? So schools and programs, they would understand what each other, what each the other program does, what are the eligibility around it, right? How can families access services? Everyone would be on the same page, right? They would have common goals. That's huge. Less bureaucracy. Okay. Collaboration. Very good. So you all had said some of these, but they would break out of silos, right? This idea that I'm staying in my lane and I'm only thinking about what I need to do and what I need to produce, and I'm not thinking about how it connects with other things in the community. You would actually get access to more resources because you would have new partnerships, right? There's opportunities to go in on funding together. There's innovative thinking, right? When you bring people together that have different perspectives, that's where innovation happens, right? And then they'd also be able to work on critical issues that can't be addressed by one organization. So a lot of times, things like making sure children are prepared for kindergarten, that's not typically something that one organization can address. It's not something just the elementary school or just the early learning programs can address. It does take the effort of everyone that touches the life of that child. And so I just want to share this comic with you. As you can see, this is from an organization, but they have the different parts of the organization. You know, there's a research and development, marketing, operations, sales, the creative department. And so they say, nope, free range won't work. They're happier in separate pens, where they can blame each other when things go wrong, right? And so we do see that a lot in the early childhood system, where the elementary school may blame the early learning programs for not preparing children for kindergarten, right? And then the early learning programs will say, well, the kindergarten is not situated, or it's not made for children to be successful, right? We need to do more play. And so this idea that if we all stay in our separate silos, it is easier to just blame each other for why things are not better. But we want to move away from that. And so what I'd like to do now is do a poll. And I just wanted to let you know this is also part of your handout. And this comes from the Hardwood Institute. And it's this idea of turning outward. And it's a step-by-step process developed by the Hardwood Institute for Public Innovation. And it entails taking steps to better understand communities, changing processes and thinking to make conversations more community-focused, being proactive to the community issues and putting community aspirations first. So looking at the statement, what best describes the focus of your work? And so we have the majority of people, 100%, have said that making sure that things are getting done and people are working together to make it happen produces results. And we have to start there before we think about credit. Right? So that's great. So that's already adopting that collaboration mindset, right? Versus what my issues are, what I'm working on, and then going forward and thinking about the credit that may come from it. And so this idea of community systems development, like the question before said, is really about adopting that type of mindset. And so in Illinois, we know that there's nearly 1 million children, right, from birth to kindergarten entry, and nearly half are children with high needs, including those that experience homelessness, are in foster care, have developmental delays, and about 43% live in households earning less than 200% of the federal poverty level. So children of color and children who speak a language other than English, they account for about half of the children entering public kindergarten each year. And racial and ethnic disparities in household income, access to health care, as well as parental employment and education, all these things contribute to disparities in child outcomes. And recognizing that the growing population of children with multiple needs will make up about half of the state's future workforce, it's really imperative that they're well prepared, right? And so even though we've seen increased investments in early childhood education, school districts still continue to report that many children with high needs arrive into kindergarten not prepared, right? And so this idea of community systems development is a process by which community stakeholders, back to that video, right? They take collective responsibility for the young children in their community by building an aligned, high quality, accessible early learning system that supports all children to be successful. And if we look at our state's vision, right, which is each and every child enters kindergarten safe, healthy, ready to succeed, and eager to learn, all the circles around that are some of the systems that help and influence this, right? So we have early learning programs at the top where you can see, but we also need health providers, right? So we know some of the things that the children are experiencing, whether it's childhood obesity, other health, we know we need health providers involved. Social services, when you have families that are dealing with housing issue or unemployment, right? Especially as we're in the COVID-19 environment. We know early intervention needs to be a part of that. If children are not receiving the services that they need early on, they're less likely to be prepared, as well as family education. Somebody brought this up before about families being better informed, and so on. So all these different systems working together to meet that vision that we have in Illinois. So looking at this visual, what are things that stand out to you from this definition of what community system development is, or this idea? Someone said better workload, family education. There's too many parts. That's right. There are a lot of variables, right? This thing that we're in about improving outcomes for children and family is complex, right? But that things are interrelated, right? And that they also overlap. For example, if we talk about institutions of higher education, they're really responsible for preparing teachers, right? And so if we're going to have high quality early learning programs, we need to have higher education be a part of how they're preparing teachers as well. Someone, Nicole said, I feel like schools currently leave out some major parts of the circle. Mental health, that's right, child abuse prevention, social services. And this is why we are proposing, yes, because all those things do impact children, that then we are part of working with other folks, right? That we are part of collaboratives that are helping to address some of this because they are affecting the children that we serve, right? And the families that we serve. So just keep that. This is the definition we'll be using going forward. Yes, and it can seem overwhelming. That's why we have to identify what are we able to bring to this collaborative? What's the expertise? What is the perspective that we're able to provide? And standing within that. But then understanding that we probably are missing some other perspective. We might be missing mental health. We might be missing family's perspective. So this visual, sometimes we refer to this as the hot mess visual. This is the early childhood systems in our state. And so what you can see, and I know you can't see all the little pieces, and it's not really so much for you to see all the individual pieces, but it's just to understand that we have different funding streams, and we have different state agencies that all are playing a part in for the programs and services that children and families access. So at the very bottom, you see children and families. We have schools and community-based programs, which most of us are a part of. And then we see the different agencies. So we see the Illinois State Board of Ed, but we know some of the other services our families access, Illinois Department of Human Services. We have public health that's involved, DCFS, right? So if you're a community-based organization and you're licensed, that's coming out of DCFS, but that's also the Child Protective Services and so on. So that's where we are in terms of our funding and all the different places it comes from. But what we're wanting to do is to have an early childhood system that's working together, right? And so when you look at our overall goal, which is thriving children and families, we know that they intersect kind of like the visual you saw before. And so some of the major sectors when we're talking about the early childhood system is early learning and development, as well as health and family leadership and support. So all the social services that support families, right? We know families and parents are the child's first teacher, and so they need to be supported as well if we're going to see the outcomes that we want. Okay, so now I'm going to pass it over to Ruby.
Hi there. So we have another poll from the Turn quiz from the Harwood Institute, and we're going to be, like Grace said, polling you throughout the presentation. And this one has to do with your own attitudes about whether you're turned inward or outward. And what you need to do is pick the statement that best describes the focus of your work in the community. So right now it's looking like 100% of you are saying that what is our role or relationship to our community? Is the state of the community what frames our conversations inside our organization? 100% of you. Excellent. Great. Thank you. So we can move on from that poll. And we're going to be talking about community collaborations and what they are. But before we do, there is a video that we want to show you. It's actually one that we found to be very interesting because it does highlight how one change can lead to others. So just take a look at this video, please.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years, that the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of songbirds and migratory birds started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behavior of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion. The channels narrowed. More pools formed. More riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilized the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilized that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
All right, I think we're really curious to hear your reactions to this video. So we'll start with what visuals stood out to you while you were watching the video? What images stood out to you while you were watching the video? Regrowth? When the birds were able to fly free, the beauty of all the animals, beautiful nature overall, scenery, change, the bears eating the berries, the beavers building the dams, watering wolves, packs working together, nature, diversity of animals, the river. My second question to you then is, what ideas came to you as you were watching it? So I know that a few ideas have already popped up. I saw 6 degrees of separation. What other ideas came to you? Collaboration. I see how one thing can make such a huge impact, and all parts are connected to each other. Everything working together, all is interrelated, and one affects the other. A ripple effect, that's a good way to put it, yeah. And small numbers can still make dramatic changes. We need each other. I think that's the simplest, clearest way to put it. We all need each other in order for families and children to be successful in this work. So I will move on and tell you a little bit about community collaborations. So the definition here is pretty simple. Cross-system collaboration is when 2 or more individuals, organizations, or systems are working together toward a shared vision, addressing existing and emerging problems that could not be solved by a single organization or sector. So in a way, community collaborations could be the wolves of the early childhood system in making changes. So community systems development recognizes that cross-system collaboration increases benefits by focusing on shared goals. And because coordinated efforts around a shared purpose yield greater benefits and have a wider impact, collaborations develop coordinated and integrated local service delivery across the health sector, the early care and education, social services, and other service systems. And together they create and implement collaborative strategies and activities that address the unique needs, cultures, and strengths of local communities. So what we're coming to talk about and to know this afternoon is that we can better serve families when we function as a whole system. So when we're working as individual schools and programs and sectors, everything is kind of separate. And far too often, programs, agencies, and even whole sectors act more as a collection of services rather than interconnected and a well-coordinated system. And unfortunately, that creates many challenges, especially for those families who are most vulnerable and could benefit from a wide array of services and supports. So can you think of some of the challenges that not working as a whole system can bring to families and children? More stress, lack of follow-through or follow-up on referrals, yes. Difficulty accessing services, confusion on systems and policies. Everything gets repetitive and takes a long time between appointments. It's stressful. People are falling through the cracks. People don't understand. I see stressful, yes. Longer waits, people are forgotten. And families are overwhelmed. Yes, yes. Some other typical systems issues that we've seen and we know about include competition among child care providers for families, or duplication, unnecessary duplication of services, or gaps in services, or ineffective referral process, or lack of coordinated transitions when children age out. So those are a lot of the things that your statements encompass. So all this makes it difficult for families to benefit from local supports. And in community systems development, we understand that working as an aligned, coordinated system, we can better serve families so that no one agency or sector feels like they have to serve all the needs of one family. Okay, like we said, we love our polls. So here we have another one to have you determine, pick the statement that best describes the focus of your work in the community. So are you thinking first about the people whose lives you want to impact and making sure their experiences drive your programmatic choices? Or are you making sure programs you're a part of are well executed and the people who use them feel good about the services they receive? "96% of you are picking the first." Good. 24% of you make sure that the programs are well executed and people feel good about the services they receive. All right, I think we can end the poll here. I'm just curious, for those of you who say that that your programmatic choices are driven by the needs of the families, does anybody have an example of that? If not, it's okay. I'm just curious for myself. Somebody is typing. Medical needs, ESL needs. Okay. All right. So let's move on. In our line of work in community systems development, we hold this quote by Karen Pittman very close to our hearts. So programmatic interventions help people beat the odds, and systemic interventions change the odds. So we recognize, though, that programs absolutely have their value and their place in helping families meet their immediate needs. But taking a systems approach goes a bit deeper into that. So we've been saying collaborations. What is actually their role in the community? So the first role of a collaboration is to assure that the array of programs and supports in the community are appropriate. That means that programs and supports are responsive to family needs, they're accessible, they're high quality, they're well coordinated, and they're equitable. The second role of a collaboration is to improve the functioning of the whole system using systems thinking. So that means that aligning parts of the system, building new structures and processes, and addressing system barriers and their root causes. And then the third role of a collaboration in a community is to engage and convene diverse stakeholders. So those diverse stakeholders are going to co-create a shared vision and execute a cross-system assessment. They'll be part of planning and implementation and an action learning process. Then I'm just going to show you quickly some of the early learning system building strategies that are out there. So Grace already mentioned universal developmental screening, but there's also centralized or coordinated intake where families can access the no wrong door approach, and families can access services as they need them. Others are enrollment pipelines and coordinated transitions into kindergarten. There's also aligned assessment, curriculum, and instruction, cross-sector workforce development, policy advocacy, and quality improvement. So all of those are actually system building strategies. And now that we know what community systems development is, we're going to take another poll and then we'll talk a little bit more. So the next poll, pick the statement that best describes the focus of your work. We have to regularly listen to people in our community in a way that lets them be open about the kind of community they want and the challenges they see. Or we need to make sure that we have enough ways to connect with people. That might be educational opportunities or other kinds of fun activities where people get to learn about our work. overwhelmingly, it seems that most of you are regularly listening to people in the community. But then there's also a need for providing educational opportunities or other ways to connect. So 3/4. Thank you. Okay, so talked about community systems development and the systems approach and community collaborations. So who is doing this work? Who is doing this work in Illinois? I know earlier somebody said that they didn't know that there was this type of work happening in Illinois. Well, there's actually over 40 local early childhood collaborations. And 16 of those started between 2010 and 2013. So they're relatively young. And those came about just before and during the federal Race to the Top grant. And then the oldest collaboration in the state is actually over 30 years old. But there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. They're not local franchises. Some are completely organic and independent, and some may be affiliated with larger initiatives like the All Our Kids Network, they're known as AOK, or McV, which is mostly home visiting, or Cradle to Career Collective Impact Networks. Any questions so far with this? Who's doing it in the state? And then I'm going to show you a map of that's a better visual of it. Okay. Well, here is the map of Illinois. And everywhere that you see green, that is an AOK collaboration, an AOK network. So that's a statewide network of collaboration. The red dots that you see, and they're more toward the northern part of the state, although there is one toward the south. Those are early development instruments. So they focus on collecting community data. The purple ones are unaffiliated. That means they get their funding through private sources. And in some cases, it might mean they're a 501c3 nonprofit. In others, it might mean they have no funding, but they still have a way to meet with one another regularly and talk about and tackle system issues. And then the yellow up toward the top, yellow dots, those are McV. So they focus on home visiting and have coordinated intake of all the home visiting options in the community. But the color that's there the most is the blue. And the blue ones are counties that don't have a community collaboration at all, or at least not one we know of. So we know that there is a lot of work to be done. Now Grace is going to go on.
Thanks, Ruby. I'm just curious, are any of you part of a collaboration? So where you are, is there an early childhood collaboration that you know of? You could respond in the chat, or you could raise your hand. Just curious how many may be about. So Nicole said, I work in a green. Okay. So yeah, so if you wanted to, so this one is from December 2018. We do have an updated profile that's coming out with community collaborations, and so because there are newer ones that form all the time. So on our website, Partner Plan Act, and I'll just go ahead and put it in the chat so you could look it up also, is wherever you work, if you see that there's already a collaboration, you may want to connect, right? And so typically they meet once a month, but they also do have working groups. And so sometimes you'll have a working group that might be focusing on aligning curriculum, right, across the early learning system where they are in their community. So communities define in different ways for a collaborative. In some parts, it could be a county-wide collaborative, and others it's smaller. For example, in the city of Chicago, the collaboratives tend to be neighborhood, right? So there's a North Lawndale early learning collaborative, and so on. So someone says our district has an MOU with the Head Start and the Children's Home and Aid. Someone said they work in the purple, right? Okay, those are the independent collaborations. Some work in the blue. Okay, very good. So I'll talk about what are the elements of community collaboration. So we're going to talk about 4 major elements. So one is that they all have a mission and vision statements that kind of bring the group together, right? What are we meeting for? What are we coming together around, right? So that kind of anchors their work. Another element is that they all have a diverse stakeholder, meaning that they're including folks from different parts of the sector. So going back to those visuals that we presented before with the ovals, there's folks from the health community that are involved. There's folks from the social service community involved as well. And then another element is governance. How are we organizing ourselves, right? How do we make decisions? What is our funding source? And last is what are the resources that come into that collaboration. So you'll see that people are in different places with that. So I'll go over each one specifically. So when we look at mission and vision, they reflect the goals and aspirations of an early childhood collaboration. So I'll provide an example. So this is Oak Park Collaboration. And their mission says, we champion high quality early childhood care and learning experiences and support for families so all children develop to their full potential. So this is the mission that they've developed that brings everyone together. Their vision is a community where every child thrives. So like you all saw in that video, the build video with the little bouncy balls, is that it is really aspirational, right? It's this idea that we're all in this together. So you have that to anchor your work, but then the work does happen within those committees and those working groups, assessments, data informs your work, but you really do need, what is it that we're sort of aspiring to? So that second element is diverse stakeholders. So we've been saying stakeholder, but really, so what a stakeholder is a person, customer, or citizen who's involved with an organization or society, and therefore has responsibilities towards it and an interest in its success. Right? So in an early childhood collaboration, it's very important that you have diverse stakeholders. Why do you think that is? Why is that essential to creating a healthy collaboration? What is the importance of having a diverse group of stakeholders? Someone said lots of ideas. Passionate. Different perspectives on what is important, how to do things, how to prioritize goals. Representation of different cultures and needs, yes. Everyone has a different perspective. So every part of the community is represented. That's really important. Someone else said to make better decisions. So we can take a look at how things from a variety of perspectives and remember to keep in mind the whole child, right? Various ideas, knowledge. That's right. And I would also add to this is that what we found from our work with early childhood collaborations is one stakeholder that tends to be missing, believe it or not, our families, our parents, right? Yeah. So that's been a challenge for early childhood collaborations, is including, and that's one of the things that we help provide support around, is how do you authentically engage families and make sure that parents are at the table, they are part of making decisions in their community collaboration. I know we just talked about mission and vision, but does anyone want to share what is the mission or vision of their organization? So I'll go back. This is the one that we had for the Oak Park collaboration. Let's see, Angelica's typing. Okay, so Angelica wrote, our mission is to give childcare to unserved communities. Margaret says to educate the whole child, including all the developmental domains. Someone else is sharing. Our district statement is educate students, empower individuals, and build character. Okay, so another aspect is governance. So with so many diverse stakeholders, again, back to that visual where you saw the circle and all the different areas that are represented in a collaboration, you need to make sure that you have transparent and effective governance. So there's really no one size fits all style of governance, and it needs to fit the needs of that collaboration. So it could look different from community to community, but generally we know in an early childhood collaboration that they do work with committees and work groups, because as you can imagine, everyone has their particular job and role, right? So I may be a teacher, but when I'm joining the collaborative, I may be part of a work group that's thinking about pre-K transitions, right? So a lot of the work happens within those work groups. That's how you're able to chunk out the work. Another area is decision making. How is it that we're going to decide what we're going to work on? How do we make sure there's accountability that the work is moving forward? Because again, we're taking collective responsibility. So what does that actually look like? Again, so this idea of collaboration is really great, but here in this governance piece is what helps you to keep track of the work and make sure that it's happening in a way that's equitable, that we're being held accountable for the work, that you have diverse folks involved as well. Another is member roles and responsibilities. So what is the role of the convener? So the collaboration leader, some collaborations have a funded role where the person brings together, they help to coordinate the meetings, they act as that convener. But what is the role of other folks in the collaboration? And so it's very important to have for that to be clearly delineated. Another aspect of governance is the fiscal responsibility or the authority. So as a collaboration, we've seen some that have applied for funding or received funding. So who's going to be that fiscal agent, right? And what's going to be the role of the other collaboration members? Just like any other good organization, operating procedures, and then staffing. The last aspect has to do with resources. And so a lot, like we said before, if not most early child collaborations, they're made up of partners who come together, and they may or may not have a lot of financial backing. So naturally, most collaborations' greatest resource is their collaboration partners. And these partners contribute their time, their knowledge, their connections, their materials, and any other resources they might have. Some organizations have a backbone organization. This can be sometimes through a foundation, it's through public funding, but whenever they're able to have that, they act as the person or that organization that's helping to bring everyone together, and so they staff the collaboration. Another resource is our team, Community Systems Statewide Supports Team, and we provide coaching to that leadership team to help them think about what data they're using to support their work, how are they able to design strategies, if they're wanting to specifically look at equity, how is that happening, engaging families. And so as you can see, it is including a lot of different aspects. And so it's really helpful to have someone come alongside you that's able to coach and to bring in resources and ideas as well. Okay, and now I will hand it over to, I have one more poll for you before I hand it over. So let's look at inputs and impact. So again, you're going to look at the statement. The first one says, I have to stay focused on the tasks I have to do as part of a larger effort. I can't worry about anything else. Another one is, my tasks are important, but only so far as they are leading to results that improve lives and our community. I'm always checking whether what I'm doing adds up. So this is looking at inputs and impact. Okay. So 100% of you have picked that impact, right? So really there's that focus on how are my tasks actually adding up, right? What is the impact of what I am doing? And so that is the focus of early child collaboration, is looking at impact. And a lot of times they'll look at data to help them think about what is the impact that we are having.
All right, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about us and the support that we provide to collaborations throughout the state. So, like we've said, we're community systems statewide supports. That is a mouthful. And Grace already told you what our purpose is. But what I also want to share about us is that one of our core values is equity. So everything we do is through an equity lens, and we keep equity at the forefront of all of our conversations and all of our work. And what we're striving to do is to support collaborations in moving from good intentions to actually having equitable outcomes for all children. So in that spirit, we wanted to show you this cartoon and just get your thoughts about it. So take a minute to look at it. And then let us know, what does this cartoon make you think about in regard to equity or in general? See somebody's typing. So again, what does the cartoon make you think about? Not everyone needs the same things, and those that need don't always get what they need. That it's somewhat impossible to be fair. It doesn't matter how good the intentions are if there isn't any follow through or people don't follow them. Trust and confusion. Good intentions don't always lead anywhere. Building blocks of education. Good intentions may not always match the community's intentions. That's interesting. And sometimes good intentions look like a one size fits all, which isn't what a person needs sometimes. So just a couple more people are typing. Let's see what they have to say. Sometimes good intentions are not enough. And good intentions are only intentions if you don't do something. Thank you. So yeah, in order to understand this cartoon, you have to know the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so we want to make sure that we are going beyond intentions. And like Jennifer just said, put actions behind your intentions. Grace, is there anything you want to add on the equity front for our team?
Sure. So what I'll add on here around equity is that, again, if the goal of community collaborations is really to improve outcomes for children and families, it's really important to think about why are there disparities in what we see, whether it's how children are prepared for kindergarten when you look at the kids' data, and you break them out by race, by children that speak another language, children with special needs, you begin to see a lot of the disparities. So one of the things we help communities to do is dig deeper and look at why are those disparities? What are we able to do? And then sometimes what happens when we try to do a strategy in a community, it may help everyone, but then what it's doing is that it's not helping to address the inequities, right? It's not helping to close any of those gaps. So those are some of the deeper conversations that need to happen. Whenever you talk about systems, right? We talk about all these different systems. We know in the U.S. historically, there's been inequities baked into those systems. And so if you're not taking that systems approach, what can happen is, even though what we're doing is really great things, what they do is they continue to perpetuate inequity. So this is actually a huge piece of systems thinking, and one that really deserves a deeper dive into.
Thank you, Grace. And one other part of equity in regard to systems thinking and the systems approach is involving families and community members in the work of the collaboration so that they have a say in what is happening in their communities. So we see genuine involvement of parents and families and community members as a way to include equity in the systems, the community systems development. Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about the kinds of supports that we, the community systems statewide supports team, provide to community collaborations throughout the state. So like Grace said, we provide coaching, but we also provide on-demand consultation. So there might be a collaboration that needs specific help or information regarding one thing, and then we can work with them. So some of the things that we do with them is help them set and align a common vision. So really zeroing in on what it is that the collaboration wants to do with the community and for the community. We also support them with strategies for member recruitment, so figuring out who are the stakeholders that should be at the table to get better results, or how to retain their members or get buy-in from their members. Sometimes not all collaboration members are really bought into what the collaboration, the direction that it's moving in, so helping them get buy-in and commitment to the work. Then we also provide support around facilitation skills, and that may be just meeting skills or presentation skills or any sort of facilitation skills that community collaboration members and leaders might have. We also provide support around coordination of services like intakes, referrals, and follow-ups, and how to get those things coordinated. We provide systems change strategies as well, especially if collaborations are part of our Collaboration Institute. They are specifically working on systems change strategies when they're part of our institute. Another big thing, again, linked to data, is that we support collaborations in using data to guide their action. So they're not just taking a guess or a stab at what the collaboration what the community needs, but actually gathering and analyzing data for the community and using that data to guide their action. And then we also provide support in engaging families, again, as a part of the equity thinking. And also just because it makes sense to have families be part of a community collaboration because they make up the community. And something that we use with the collaborations that we support and we encourage them to use is this acronym that we came up with, AWARE. So in everything that collaborations do, we are asking them if they're engaging those most affected and what factors are producing inequities. And then are there strategies perpetuating inequities? So like many of you have said, and Grace also mentioned, you might have a great strategy that's put into place, but it doesn't really deal with the inequities that are already in place. So is your strategy perpetuating an inequity? Is it resulting in equitable outcomes? And then the last thing that we ask collaborations to do is to really evaluate their impact. What have they accomplished or what have they not accomplished when it comes to their work? And I see Grace mentioned that you can start sending us questions, so we will have a chance to address them. I just want to bring your attention to the resources and opportunities that we might have for you, or that you might want to find out about if there's a collaboration in your community. We have, if you go to partnerplanact.org, there you can find an online community. So that would connect you with other early childhood systems thinkers across the state, and you can share questions and strategies and resources. Then there's also, like I mentioned earlier, on-demand learning. So you can take learning into your own hands. The first course, so we have courses that you take at your own pace, and the first course is called Early Childhood Collaboration Data. And so that delves into how to focus your purpose and collect and make meaning from data and communicate your findings and build a data structure. Like I said earlier, on-demand consultation. So collaborations can get up to 6 hours of consultation on a wide range of topics. You can also find out about our regional trainings on partnerplanact.org. You can find our monthly newsletter, and that newsletter highlights various initiatives that collaborations throughout the state are taking, as well as many other things related to community systems development. And sorry, that's the monthly newsletter. And then you can also find out about our virtual summit. So our virtual summit, it's usually an in-person conference, but this year is virtual, and it's going to take place June 8th through 12th. So if you want to find out more about that, you could find it at partnerplanact.org. And then the last thing I want to tell you about as an opportunity or resource is the Collaboration Institute, like I mentioned earlier. So it's a year-long training, and you receive training and coaching, and it's a cohort really. And we support collaborations in strengthening their systems change efforts. So right now we're actually accepting applications for the coming fiscal year, and the application period is in progress through June 1st. So we have the link there, and you can find out more information. And then Grace.
So I know during this, especially during this COVID-19, that communities have been working together on a lot of different things, right? So schools have been providing meals for families to do at home, teachers supporting that. I know from what we've done with community collaboration, they've been able to provide support to families that were actually struggling with rent or things like that. So what has been happening in your community? What are examples of how you've been collaborating in your community, specifically during this time? I think it's always helpful to hear from people. You always get ideas as well. So are there any ways that you all have been collaborating? Programs or agencies in your community to support children and families during this time? So someone said they've been doing weekly team meetings and check-ins, finding food resources for families. Senna said they've been in contact with centers around the area to see who's still providing emergency care. Check-ins with families. Sonia said they're working on kindergarten transitions, right? That's really interesting, how to do that in this virtual setting. Monique says she's part of a parent educator group that meets every month, and we share resources and ideas on parent engagement. Those are all really, really great ideas. A lot of people are using Zoom. Tamara says she's in the OK network, Cook County, and they're staying connected about services that are available for families. Mental health, right? That's been something, an issue, right? So they're addressing mental health needs and connecting families with resources. That's great. Food distribution through schools. IEP phone conferences. Karen's reminding everyone that we do have a webinar May 28th that's talking about virtual kindergarten transition. So there's lots of ideas shared there as well. So yeah, there's lots and lots of Zoom since that's the main way we're connecting with families. So yes, if you all have any questions around collaboration, around things that collaborations have done, any sort of questions or where to start, feel free to type them in. Great, sharing. Grade level meetings. So if you all do have any questions, go ahead and type them in. I don't think I've seen a question specifically around collaboration or early child collaboration, but again, encouraging you that if you're not involved in collaboration, I would say especially during this time, collaboration is a source of information, of resources, of really connecting families, helping to meet needs, and they're engaged with, like I said, again, different sectors. So whatever the business community is doing, whatever the health sector is doing, they're able to connect all that together, families. And so if you want to reach out to us, again, I'm Grace and Ruby. We're both your presenters today. That's our email. We'll get these handouts. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We're always looking for how we can be responsive to needs. And so if you all thinking of issues that you see and that you're not really sure where the supports are around that, feel free to reach out to us. We have been building out supports as we encounter and about them. So thank you all for